Imagine walking through a forest where every shadow could be your last, where the ground trembles beneath footsteps that could crush a car, and where eyes the size of dinner plates track your every movement from the darkness. This isn't some Hollywood nightmare. This was reality for millions of years on our planet, when Earth belonged to creatures so terrifying that they make today's apex predators look like house pets. Throughout our planet's 4.5 billion-year history, life has produced some of the most horrifying killing machines ever conceived. We're talking about predators with teeth longer than baseball bats, claws that could slice through steel, and hunting instincts so refined they dominated entire ecosystems for millions of years. These weren't just big animals. These were evolutionary masterpieces of death, perfectly designed by nature to hunt, kill, and terrorize everything in their path. But here's what most people don't realize about prehistoric predators. The dinosaurs everyone thinks of, like Tyrannosaurus rex, were actually just the tip of the iceberg. Before them, alongside them, and even after them, our planet was home to creatures so nightmarish that paleontologists are still discovering new ways these ancient killers could end your life in seconds. Some hunted in packs with coordinated intelligence that would make modern wolves jealous. Others were solitary giants that could swallow prey whole without even chewing. And the most terrifying part? Many of these predators were so successful at what they did that they ruled their respective time periods for tens of millions of years. I'm talking about predators that make great white sharks look harmless, land hunters that could outrun a cheetah while weighing as much as an elephant, and flying death machines with wingspans wider than fighter jets. These creatures didn't just survive in their environments, they shaped them, molded them, and turned entire continents into their personal hunting grounds. Over the next several parts of this series, we're going to journey through deep time to meet the most terrifying prehistoric predators that ever lived. I've spent months researching the latest paleontological discoveries, consulting with leading experts, and diving into fossil evidence that will make your skin crawl. We're going to explore not just what these creatures looked like, but how they hunted, what made them so deadly, and why they were so successful at being absolutely terrifying. But before we dive into the bloodbath of prehistoric predation, let me set the stage for you. When we think about dangerous animals today, we might worry about encountering a grizzly bear in the woods or a shark in the ocean. Those fears are nothing compared to what our distant ancestors faced. Picture this. You're a small mammal scurrying through the underbrush 65 million years ago, and suddenly the forest goes silent. Not because there's no life around, but because every living thing has frozen in terror. That's the moment you realize something truly massive is hunting nearby, something with footsteps that shake the earth and a roar that can be heard for miles. These prehistoric predators weren't just randomly violent, they were the result of millions of years of evolutionary arms races, where only the most efficient killers survived to pass on their genes. Every aspect of their anatomy was refined for one purpose: ending lives as quickly and efficiently as possible. We're talking about creatures with bite forces that could crush cars, visual systems that could track prey from impossible distances, and hunting strategies so sophisticated they bordered on genius. What makes this even more incredible is that these predators dominated completely different worlds from the one we know today. Earth's climate, geography, and ecosystems were radically different during various prehistoric periods. Some of these killers thrived in tropical swamps that covered entire continents. Others ruled ice ages, where survival itself was a daily battle. And many hunted in environments so alien to our modern world that they might as well have been on a different planet entirely. The diversity of prehistoric predators is absolutely staggering. While movies tend to focus on the same handful of famous dinosaurs, the reality is that nature experimented with countless different approaches to being a perfect killer. Some predators relied on overwhelming size and brute force, becoming walking tanks of destruction. Others evolved incredible speed and agility, turning themselves into biological missiles that could strike without warning. Still others developed pack hunting strategies that required intelligence and cooperation that rivals what we see in modern predators. And here's something that will blow your mind. Many of these prehistoric predators were more successful than anything alive today. They dominated their ecosystems for time spans that make human civilization look like a brief moment. Some predator lineages ruled for 50, 60, even 70 million years. Compare that to modern humans, who have only existed for about 300,000 years, and you start to realize just how incredibly effective these ancient killers were. But what truly separates prehistoric predators from modern ones isn't just their size or their weapons. It's the sheer variety of nightmare fuel that evolution produced. We had predators that hunted from the air with wingspans that blocked out the sun. We had aquatic monsters that turned ancient oceans into killing fields where nothing was safe. We had land predators so massive they could hunt other giants, and others so small and vicious they could swarm their prey like living nightmares. The fossil record reveals hunting behaviors that seem almost too terrifying to be real. We found evidence of pack hunters that could coordinate attacks on prey 10 times their size. We've discovered predators that used their environment as a weapon, driving prey into deadly traps. And we've uncovered fossils showing predators that were so perfectly adapted to killing that they barely needed to evolve for millions of years because they had already achieved biological perfection. Throughout this series, we're going to meet predators from every major period of Earth's history. We'll start with some of the earliest terrifying hunters that emerged from ancient seas, creatures that established the template for predation that would echo through hundreds of millions of years. Then we'll move through the various geological periods, watching as evolution continuously refined and perfected the art of being absolutely deadly. We'll encounter marine predators that turned ancient oceans into nightmarish hunting grounds where even the largest prey couldn't escape. We'll meet the flying terrors that ruled prehistoric skies, making air travel a death sentence for anything smaller than themselves. And of course, we'll face the land predators that dominated terrestrial ecosystems with such efficiency that they became the stuff of legends. Each of these predators has a story to tell about survival, evolution, and the incredible creativity of nature when it comes to designing perfect killing machines. Some of these stories involve evolutionary arms races that lasted millions of years, with predators and prey locked in an endless cycle of adaptation and counter-adaptation. Others reveal sudden evolutionary breakthroughs that created predators so effective they changed the rules of life on Earth overnight. But here's what makes this journey even more fascinating. Many of these prehistoric predators faced the same challenges that modern predators do, just scaled up to almost incomprehensible levels. They had to find food, avoid becoming food themselves, compete with rivals, and adapt to changing environments. The difference is that when you're a 40-foot-long predator with teeth like railroad spikes, these basic survival challenges become epic battles that shape the course of life on Earth. The evidence for these incredible creatures comes from fossils, but also from trace fossils like bite marks, trackways, and coprolites that reveal intimate details about how these predators lived and hunted. Modern technology has allowed paleontologists to reconstruct not just what these animals looked like, but how they moved, how hard they could bite, and even how they might have behaved when hunting. So buckle up, because we're about to embark on a journey through deep time to meet creatures so terrifying that they make every monster movie seem tame by comparison. These are the most successful killers in Earth's history, and their stories will change how you think about predation, evolution, and the incredible power of nature to create perfect nightmares. In our next part, we'll dive into the ancient oceans, where some of the very first super predators emerged from the depths. These ancient seas were unlike anything we know today. Picture oceans that stretched across continents with no familiar coastlines, where the water itself was a different color, and the very chemistry of these primordial waters created conditions perfect for growing monsters. This was during the Paleozoic era, hundreds of millions of years ago, when life was still figuring out the basic rules of predation, and what it came up with was absolutely terrifying. The first true nightmare of the ancient seas was a creature called Anomalocaris, and this thing was like nothing that had ever existed before or since. Imagine a shrimp the size of a school bus, but instead of being a harmless filter feeder, this was a precision killing machine. Anomalocaris stretched over 6 feet long, which might not sound massive by today's standards, but remember, this was at a time when most other life forms were smaller than your thumb. What made Anomalocaris so horrifying wasn't just its size, but how it hunted. This creature had 2 massive appendages that extended from the front of its head like giant grasping arms. These weren't clumsy club-like limbs, but sophisticated tools equipped with sharp spines that could grab and manipulate prey with surgical precision. Picture a pair of flexible grabbing arms that could reach out, snatch a victim, and drag it back to a circular mouth lined with razor-sharp plates that could crush through the hardest shells of the time. But here's where it gets really terrifying. Anomalocaris was fast. This wasn't some lumbering giant that relied on ambush tactics. Fossil evidence shows it had flexible fins running along its sides that could propel it through the water with surprising speed and agility. It was essentially a 6-foot-long underwater missile with grasping arms and a mouth designed to pulverize anything unfortunate enough to get caught. The hunting behavior of Anomalocaris reveals something chilling about early predation. This creature didn't just grab random prey and hope for the best. Fossil evidence suggests it was selective, targeting specific types of victims and using different hunting strategies depending on what it was after. Some fossils show bite marks that indicate Anomalocaris would grab large prey and systematically break it apart, almost like it was following a predetermined plan of attack. What makes this even more remarkable is that Anomalocaris was hunting in what scientists call the Cambrian explosion, a period when life was rapidly diversifying and experimenting with new body plans. While other creatures were still figuring out basic survival, Anomalocaris had already mastered the art of being an apex predator. It was so successful that it dominated marine ecosystems for millions of years, setting the template for oceanic predation that would influence evolution for hundreds of millions of years to come. But Anomalocaris was just the beginning. As life continued to evolve and experiment, the oceans produced predators that made this early monster look almost quaint by comparison. During the Ordovician period, around 450 million years ago, the seas gave birth to creatures that redefined what it meant to be terrifying. Enter the giant nautiloids, and these things were like nature's version of living submarines, equipped with tentacles and beaks that could crack through virtually any defense. The largest of these creatures, called Camaraocaras, stretched over 30 feet long and was essentially a straight-shelled nightmare that cruised ancient seas like a biological torpedo. Unlike modern nautiluses, which are relatively small and peaceful, these ancient giants were aggressive predators that actively hunted other large marine animals. The hunting strategy of giant nautiloids was particularly cruel. They would use their powerful tentacles to grab prey, then drag it toward a beak that was perfectly designed to crack through shells and tear flesh. But what made them truly terrifying was their intelligence. Nautiloids are related to modern octopuses and squids, which means they possessed problem-solving abilities that most other creatures of their time couldn't match. They weren't just mindless eating machines, they were thinking predators that could adapt their hunting techniques based on the specific prey they encountered. Fossil evidence reveals that these giant nautiloids were ambush predators that would lurk near the ocean floor, using their excellent eyesight to spot potential victims swimming overhead. When prey came within range, they would launch themselves upward with surprising speed, using jet propulsion to rocket toward their target. The attack would be over in seconds, with the victim dragged down to the depths to be systematically dismantled by those powerful beaks. The success of giant nautiloids created an evolutionary arms race that pushed other marine creatures to develop increasingly sophisticated defenses. Trilobites, which were some of the most common creatures in ancient seas, evolved elaborate spines and thick armor specifically to protect themselves from nautiloid attacks. Some developed the ability to roll into tight balls, while others grew to enormous sizes in an attempt to become too large to be easily handled by predatory nautiloids. But perhaps the most terrifying aspect of these ancient oceanic predators was their persistence. Unlike modern predators that might give up if a hunt becomes too difficult, fossil evidence suggests that giant nautiloids would pursue prey relentlessly. They had the intelligence to track wounded prey over long distances and the patience to wait for the perfect moment to strike. Some fossils show evidence of prolonged struggles between nautiloids and their prey, with multiple bite marks and defensive wounds that tell stories of epic underwater battles. As we move forward in time, the ancient seas continued to produce predators that pushed the boundaries of what seemed possible. During the Silurian period, around 420 million years ago, a new type of predator emerged that combined size, speed, and intelligence in ways that had never been seen before. These were the Eurypterids, also known as sea scorpions, and they represent one of the most successful predator designs in Earth's history. The largest Eurypterids, like Jaekelopterus, reached lengths of over 8 feet and were built like underwater tanks equipped with massive claws and venomous stingers. But what made them truly formidable wasn't just their weapons, it was their versatility. These creatures could hunt in shallow water, deep water, and even venture onto land when pursuing prey. They were essentially amphibious nightmares that could follow you wherever you tried to hide. The hunting behavior of sea scorpions was particularly sophisticated. They used their large compound eyes to track prey from considerable distances, then employed different attack strategies depending on the situation. Against small, fast prey, they would use quick strikes with their claws. Against larger, more dangerous opponents, they would rely on their venomous stingers to immobilize victims before moving in for the kill. What makes Eurypterids even more terrifying is that they were social hunters. Fossil evidence suggests that some species hunted in groups, coordinating attacks on prey that would have been impossible for a single individual to handle. Picture a pack of 8-foot-long armored scorpions working together to bring down a massive prey animal, each using their specialized weapons in perfect coordination with the others. The success of these ancient marine predators created ocean ecosystems that were fundamentally different from anything we see today. These weren't environments where small fish could safely school in shallow waters, or where slow-moving creatures could survive by simply avoiding attention. These were killing fields where constant vigilance was the only way to stay alive, and where even the largest and most well-defended creatures lived in constant fear of becoming someone else's next meal. The evolutionary arms race in these ancient oceans reached its absolute peak during the Devonian period, around 380 million years ago. This era produced what many paleontologists consider the most perfectly designed killing machine in Earth's history, Dunkleosteus. And when I say perfectly designed, I mean this creature was so effective at being a predator that it barely needed to evolve for over 50 million years because nature had already achieved biological perfection. Dunkleosteus wasn't just big, though at 30 feet long it certainly commanded respect. What made this predator truly terrifying was its mouth. Instead of teeth, Dunkleosteus had evolved massive bony plates that formed razor-sharp cutting edges. These weren't delicate structures that could break or wear down. These were living guillotines that could slice through virtually anything the ancient seas had to offer. The bite force of Dunkleosteus has been calculated at over 11,000 pounds per square inch. To put that in perspective, that's stronger than a Tyrannosaurus rex, stronger than any modern predator, and powerful enough to cut a great white shark in half with a single bite. But what makes this even more incredible is the speed at which Dunkleosteus could deliver this devastating attack. Biomechanical studies suggest it could snap its jaws shut in just 20 milliseconds, creating a suction force so powerful it would literally vacuum prey into its mouth before they even realized they were being attacked. This combination of overwhelming power and lightning speed made Dunkleosteus the undisputed apex predator of Devonian seas. Nothing was safe from this monster. Large fish, other predators, even heavily armored creatures fell victim to those bone-crushing jaws. Fossil evidence shows bite marks from Dunkleosteus on virtually every type of large marine animal from its time period, proving that this predator didn't just dominate its ecosystem, it terrorized it. But perhaps the most chilling aspect of Dunkleosteus was its hunting intelligence. This wasn't a mindless eating machine that attacked everything in sight. Fossil evidence reveals sophisticated hunting behaviors, including what appears to be strategic thinking about how to approach different types of prey. Against fast-moving targets, Dunkleosteus would use ambush tactics, lurking motionless until prey came within striking distance. Against larger, more dangerous opponents, it would employ hit-and-run attacks, inflicting massive wounds and then retreating to let blood loss do the rest of the work. The reign of these armored sea monsters lasted for millions of years, but their dominance came to an end during one of Earth's most devastating extinction events. The late Devonian extinction wiped out many of these apex predators, but it also opened the door for new types of marine nightmares to evolve and take their place. As we transition from these ancient oceanic killing fields to the terrestrial predators that would eventually rule the land, it's important to understand that the lessons learned in these prehistoric seas would influence predator evolution for hundreds of millions of years. The basic principles of ambush hunting, coordinated attacks, and overwhelming force that we see in these marine monsters would be refined and perfected by the land predators that followed. The fossil record of these ancient marine predators teaches us something profound about the nature of life itself. For hundreds of millions of years, our planet's oceans were dominated by creatures so perfectly adapted to killing that they shaped the evolution of every other living thing around them. They created selective pressures that forced prey species to develop increasingly sophisticated defenses, which in turn drove predators to become even more deadly. These weren't just random monsters that happened to be big and scary. These were the result of evolutionary processes that had been refining the art of predation for hundreds of millions of years. Every aspect of their anatomy, from their sensory systems to their weapons to their hunting behaviors, had been tested and perfected through countless generations of life and death struggles. As we look back at these ancient seas and the terrors they contained, we're reminded that Earth has always been a planet where the most successful creatures were those that excelled at ending other lives. The gentle, peaceful world that many people imagine when they think about nature has never really existed. Our planet has always been a place where survival meant being either very good at killing or very good at avoiding being killed. The legacy of these prehistoric marine predators lives on today in the hunting behaviors of modern sharks, the pack coordination of killer whales, and the ambush tactics of crocodiles. But none of these modern predators can match the sheer variety and effectiveness of the monsters that once ruled ancient seas. They were evolution's first attempts at creating perfect killing machines, and in many ways, they succeeded beyond anything we see in the modern world. These ancient oceanic nightmares set the stage for everything that would follow in predator evolution. They established the basic rules of predation that would govern life on Earth for hundreds of millions of years. And most importantly, they proved that when it comes to creating terrifying predators, nature's imagination knows no bounds. The stories of Anomalocaris, giant nautiloids, sea scorpions, and Dunkleosteus remind us that our planet has always been home to creatures beyond our wildest nightmares. These weren't the products of Hollywood special effects or fantasy literature. These were real animals that lived, hunted, and died in oceans that once covered our world, and their fossil remains continue to reveal new secrets about just how terrifying life on Earth used to be. As we close this journey through the prehistoric seas, remember that these marine monsters were just the beginning. The land would soon give rise to predators that made these oceanic nightmares look almost tame by comparison. But that's a story for another time, and trust me, you're going to want to prepare yourself for what's coming next. The most terrifying prehistoric predators in history weren't just big animals with sharp teeth. They were evolutionary masterpieces, perfectly designed by millions of years of natural selection to be as deadly as possible. And while they may be gone, their legacy lives on in every predator that hunts today, reminding us that on planet Earth, being a perfect killer has always been the key to evolutionary success.